Hello children, welcome back to your English class. So here is one more topic from your grammar book, and that is transitive and intransitive verbs. So we are going to see the meaning of these words, right, about them and the objects, direct as well as indirect objects. So first of all, let's start with the meaning. So first of all, let's see what do we mean by a transitive verb. Students, a transitive is a verb that speaks of an action which passes from doer to receiver, right? That means these are the verbs which tell us about the action which passes. So the action passes from doer, which is the subject, to the receiver, which is the object. So basically, you have to remember that a transitive verb always require an object. It always require an object, like the girl locks the door. So in this, the doer of the action is the girl. The action done is lock, right? The action kya hai? What is the verb? Locks. And locks what? The door. So the door is the object, right? So the action is passing from the girl to the door, right? So that's why it's a transitive verb, because it is having an object. So transitive verb always have an object, right? So these are the verbs which speaks of the action being passed. Action is passing from doer to receiver, right? Intransitive are the verbs. What are they? These are the verbs that speak of an action which does not pass on to an object. So in transitive, we have seen transitive verbs are the ones in which action passes from doer to receiver. But in intransitive verbs, it doesn't happen. That means an intransitive verb, an action does not pass on to an object because there is no object, right? Like the girl runs fast. So we cannot ask runs what? No answer will be there. That means no object, right? So it's not having any object. It's intransitive verb. So the verb with object is transitive and without object is intransitive. Got it, everyone? This is the major difference between these two verbs. Okay, in intransitive verb, the action doesn't pass to object, but in transitive verb, it passes from doer, that means subject, to object. Okay, some verbs are used only intransitively. That means they don't require an object, right? Like these are the actions described by these verbs cannot be passed on to an object. ये जो verbs हैं, इनसे जो action है, these action can not be passed on to an object. ये object के पास नहीं जाता है. There is no object. These verbs don't require any object. That's why these are intransitive verbs. These are used intransitively. Some of them are come, go, sleep, die, snore, and many more. Okay, intransitively means they don't require any object. The actions can't pass on to an object, right? On the other hand, if we see, okay, so in these, actions cannot be passed on to an object. Let's take the example. She fell down. So in this, fell is the verb, right? But there is no object in this. We can't ask fell what. If we ask fell what, we won't get any answer, right? Okay, so there's no object. That's why it's intransitive. Next, the old man snored loudly. Okay, in this again, old man is the doer, but there is no object. Okay, there's no object in this. So snored will be an intransitive verb because it is not having object with it, and action isn't passing from doer to object because there is no object only, right? So these are intransitive verbs. Some verbs can be used only transitively. In the same way, some verbs are there which can be used only transitively. That means they always require an object. Okay, like if we take one example, I recognize that man. So in this, recognize is the verb. Action ho raha hai, it's a verb. Right? Now recognized what? Man. So it is the object. Right? So we are having the object. That means it is a transitive verb because it is showing us that the action is passing from subject to object. Okay, students. So these were transitive and intransitive verbs. Okay. Right. Now we are going to discuss about objects. So basically, students, there is one object in a sentence, but sometimes there are two objects also. Right. So if in a transitive verb is there and we are having two objects, then one will be direct object and other one will be indirect. Like transitive verbs usually have one object, but in some sentences there are two objects also, right? So in that case, if we are having two objects, then one is direct object and the other one is indirect object. Okay, so now we have to differentiate that which one is direct object and which one is indirect object. So how we are going to find it out? First of all, let's see what do we mean by direct object. So basically the object which receives the action denoted by the verb directly जो action receive कर रहा है. And when we put the question like what after the verb, if we put the word what or ask a question by putting what after the verb, the answer that we will get, that will be our direct object, right? Let's take one example. The man wrote the book. The man wrote the book. Wrote is the verb here. Okay. So if we ask or put a word what after the verb, then what we will get? Just see. In this sentence, the verb is wrote. Okay. And we will just put what after wrote. So wrote what? Wrote what? क्या लिखा? So answer क्या मिला हमें? The book. Okay. So here the book will be what? Direct object. Got it? So we have just added what after our verb. Okay, and whatever answer we will get, it will be direct object. Got it, everyone? Right? So remember that basically direct objects deal with non-living things. Got it? That's why we put a question what. Right? And when we talk about indirect objects, just see, it identifies to whom or for what. Like to whom, किसके लिए, right? So it identifies to whom or for what or whom the action is performed, right? For whom the action is performed. Like the teacher gave him a prize. So when we look at this sentence, we'll get that the teacher gave him a prize. Now first of all, if we put a question after gave, जो कि हमारा verb है, if we put the question gave what, so what are we getting as a reply or as an answer? A prize. So after what आपको जो answer मिल रहा है, that will be our direct object. So a prize is the direct object. And if we put a question whom, like gave it to whom, किसको दिया उन्होंने prize, the answer that we are getting is him. So him will be indirect object. So basically direct objects deal with non-living things and indirect ones deal with living things. Okay. So for direct objects, you have to put a question what, and for indirect one, you have to put a question for whom or for what or to whom. The answer that you will get will be indirect object. So these were the two kinds of objects, direct and indirect objects. I hope both the kinds, transitive and intransitive verbs, they both are clear to you, as well as objects also. Right? So please go through the chapter, students, go through the exercises. If you find any issue, please contact me. Okay, so I'll see you all in the next class. Till then, just take care, students.